If you're looking for highly customizable Mage WeakAuras for Wrath of the Lich King Classic, well, you're watching the right video. I'll be showing you how to install and properly customize them to your liking. We have a lot to cover, so let's get right into it. Alright, so let's begin with the installation. Before we do anything, I recommend that you delete the previous version of the WeakAuras that you were using. This will ensure that we get a clean new install, which will limit the risk of possible issues. You'll only have to do this process once, since in the future, you'll simply have to update them as needed. Let's head over to luxthos.com in order to copy the import code. The link is provided in the description down below. Simply scroll down on the page, click the button to copy the code, and head back to World of Warcraft. Once you're in-game, make sure to open up the WeakAuras panel by typing /WA in the chat window. Click Import, paste the code, and you're done. One thing to keep in mind is that the name of the actual groups are very important. You need to make sure you do not rename any of them. Also, make sure you do not have any duplicates. If you have multiple copies of the same WeakAuras, the added number to the group name will cause you some issues. The last thing on our list before we move on to the customization is to make sure we activate the action bar cooldown number in the interface options. Without this, if you're using the default UI, you simply won't see any number on your auras. If you want to change the look and behavior of those numbers, you can use an add-on like OmniCC or something more complex like ElvUI. It is important to notice that both these add-ons will replace the default number. So make sure you don't have both options active at the same time, or you'll be seeing some overlaps. Alright, so we're going to move on to the customization, and we're going to start things off with placement and sizing. Because I'm using a 1440p resolution and a 100% UI render scale, you might be seeing something different on your end. The WeakAuras could be bigger or smaller, and I'm going to show you how to change just that. First off, open the WeakAura panel, so /WA. Click on the Luxthos Mage group right here, and you're going to go into the group tab over here. You have access to the group scale slider, so you can move that down if you want to size them down, or you can move it up if you want to size them up. You're going to be able also to change the X offset if you want to move it right or left if you don't want it to be centered. That's a possibility. And you're going to have access also to the Y offset to move them down or up in order to line up better with your UI and interface. So this is how you're going to adapt that and customize that to your liking. All right, so we're now going to be moving on to the groups, their utility, and how to organize the information within them. So things have changed quite a lot since the last iteration of the WeakAuras for pretty much all expansions. And I wanted to simply go over every group so you have a little bit more of an understanding of what they are, what they do, what they contain, and how to customize them. So things changed quite a lot since Burning Crusade, Shadowland, and even Battle for Azeroth. Things used to be a lot more static. So every icon in the groups, especially into the main group for your rotational ability, used to have a static position. So you couldn't really move them easily. It was a little bit complicated to get around and change things to line up with your action bar and your keybind. So I decided to change the design and make something a little bit more free-flowing and a lot easier to customize. So I'm going to go over the groups. We're going to start with Core over here, which is going to be the main group. It's going to be the main one that contains all of your rotational ability, all of your primary offensive and defensive CD, and everything else. Your movement, all of that stuff is going to be sitting in here. And as you can see, something really, really cool is happening over here. You got 8 icons at the top here that is going to be part of what I call the primary bar, the main bar for the core. And then at the bottom down here, you're going to have the overflow. So everything else that goes after 8 icon loaded is being pushed towards the bottom into the secondary bar. This means that everything in here is position based on the order in the group. So if you look right now, for example, I got Arcane Barrage that is sitting over the tracking for Arcane Blast right here, just in front. But if I want to change those because my keybinds are different maybe, all I have to do is click here and move it down. Or you can simply click and drag, and it's going to change the order. So if I close it back, you'll see that they've now changed location. I can do the same thing with all the abilities down here. Let's say that I would like Evocation to be part maybe more of the core over here because I want to keep an eye on it a little bit more. Well, you can do that. So you can move those things around exactly how you want it to. So you're completely free to move those ability around and have them part of the secondary or primary bar, all while being in the same group. So that gives you a lot of freedom over how things are going to be displayed over here. So that is quite nice. So the core group is very much the center and the core of the WeakAuras, and everything else is going to be anchored to it. So we're now going to move over to the dynamic aspect, so the dynamic effects and dynamic spells that are going to be sitting and resting right on top of the core here. We're going to have the effects loading on this side right here, which is going to be on the left side here, and they're going to grow towards the middle here, towards the right. And then on the opposite side, you're going to get the dynamic spells. So these are going to be on the opposite, growing into the opposite direction. The dynamic effects are pretty straightforward. These are going to be like small maintenance buff. So everything that is a buff, a debuff, a proc maybe from your talents, or even maybe some tier set bonus over here. So you can do a lot of things with these. So you can customize the order. If you want things to show up before or after, feel free to do so here. You can move things around. And also if you would like to unload some of them. So if some of them are not as important to you and you don't necessarily need to see them at all time, well, you can feel free to click on them, go into the load section and simply click never. So by doing this, it's no longer going to load, and you can clean this up a little bit and make it less crowded a little bit, maybe if you think there's too many things showing up. In the next section here, we're going to talk about the dynamic spells. So the dynamic spells is pretty much a little bit of an overflow. So there's a couple of ability here. You're going to get freeze from your water elemental, fire blast, and cone of cold that are going to be loading here. So for mage, these things are a little bit situational. They're not always part of your rotation. You know, they're going to be dependent a little bit on your talents, or they're going to be used more as filler. So for that reason, they're going to show up here at the top, and it's actually quite interesting. They're only going to show up when they're on cooldown. So if I use them here, you'll see that they show up, and whenever they disappear, I'll be able to know that these ability are now available, right? There's a couple of things that I changed this behavior specifically for mage. So if we go into the core, you'll also find Fire Blast and Cone of Cold. This version of Fire Blast is going to load if you have Impact. So it's going to, because I think it's going to be a lot more important to keep an eye on it, because that's going to be, usually if you spec into Impact, you're going to want to keep an eye a little bit more on this. And then Cone of Cold, if you ever spec into Frost a little bit more, then it's going to show up in here as part of your core thing, because you can use it quite a lot into AoE rotation, right? So these things are going to move depending on how you spec, but the default state here is going to stay here, especially for something like Arcane. You're not going to be wanting to watch these necessarily as much, right? So this is going to be the dynamic spell section here. You're going to be able to customize these also in the order. We're going to move on to the next area here, the left side and the right side group. So these right now are completely empty. So at the moment, they don't have any purpose, but they can have one if you decide to. So these are here in order to allow you a little bit more customization and control over the design. If you've ever played retail in Battle for Azeroth or Shadowland and you were using my WeakAuras, I used to separate the offensive cooldown on the left side here, and I would put interrupts and stuns and CC on the right side of the WeakAuras right here. Right? So if you want to achieve that design, well, you can do that. And I just decided to create the group to allow you to do that a little bit easier. So for example, if I want Presence of Mind and Arcane Power, or we can pick like all three of these, all of my, offensive kind of ability cooldown, we're going to move them into the left groups. As you can see, they just show up in here. We're going to close this. We're going to do a quick reload to allow everything to reposition itself. And voila, you now have all of your offensive cooldowns sitting on the side here. And you can do the same thing on the other side and put other ability in there if you want to. So that's going to be quite interesting. That gives you a lot of freedom, right? So having that freedom to customize all of this and be able to maybe separate some ability that are more important to you is going to be quite nice. We've already talked about the core, so we're simply going to move past it and go to the maintenance. Maintenance is, I mean, pretty straightforward. It sits down here at the bottom completely, underneath the secondary bar, and it contains your maintenance buff. So if you have Arcane Intellect, your Armor, your Amplify, and even the cooldown of Ritual of Refreshment. So all of these things are things that wouldn't necessarily go into the primary group, but we found a nice little spot here at the bottom, and you can also change the behavior of those things. So they're not going to be all the time there and create like unnecessary noise, visual noise, right? Because it's things that you don't necessarily need to track at all time, especially if there's still 12 minutes remaining on these buffs. You don't necessarily want to get annoyed by that. You're going to be able to change the behavior if you want them to show at all time or not. You have full control over that. We'll be able to show you more into the custom options a little bit later down the line. So that's going to be that for the maintenance group. We're now going to be talking about the resources. So this is a nice little group right here that's going to contain all of the information required for your health, your mana, your Arcane Blast bar, which acts kind of as a little combo point bar, and the same thing happens also for Finger of Frost. So these are just little visual helper. They're not really required. If you want, you could simply, you could simply like move them up or pretty much, do whatever you want with them. They're just nice little visual helper here if you want to see them. And so that's going to be hit for the resources. We have the health bar, which is brand new. It's not something that we used to have in the past. So it's not loaded by default, but if you want it, simply click on health bar, go into the load tab and uncheck never here. And then you're going to close this out, do a quick reload just to make sure everything is properly positioned. And here we go. We got the health bar. So that's quite nice. That's new. Gives you a little bit more possibilities with the WeakAuras. We're going to go ahead and unload it. There we go. We have the mana bar, pretty straightforward. We got the Arcane Blast bar, like I explained. So if you're doing some Arcane Blast, you're going to be able to see exactly how many you have. And when you have the maximum amount, it's going to glow white, letting you know you've hit the cap, right? So if you want, you can clear them. You can do whatever you want with these. So that's pretty nice. You're going to be able to change the color and the positioning as well, which is quite interesting. So simply, if you want them to show over your mana bar, for example, simply put them up here. There we go. And now they're going to show over. Simply reload. And here we go. So you have full control over all of this, and that's going to be quite nice. So now with all of this knowledge, you have a little bit better understanding of what everything does, what is the purpose of all of this, and we're going to be able to move on to the custom option and how to style and configure all of that nice information. All right, so we're now going to be talking about the custom options for the Mage WeakAuras. So this is going to be a pretty big segment, but should be pretty fun because this is going to allow us to completely customize and style the WeakAuras to our liking. So before we get started here, pretty much what we're going to be doing is we're going to go through every single one of those options. And as we do this, we're going to create a brand new design just for fun. Right? So we're going to try to experiment with this and show you how it all works. And before we do that, I'm going to show you where all of these options are actually coming from. So things are a little bit spread out here in a couple of layers. So we're going to have the general option layer here. So this is where you're going to get all of your general styles. So this can be applied to other classes. So this is what's going to style the overall look of the WeakAuras, right? So this can be shared to other classes, to other people. This is going to be the class option custom option. So this is going to be more related to your class with the mana bar, Arcane Blast, Finger of Frost. All of that good stuff is going to be over here. You're not going to be able to share this to other classes, but to another mage, you can share this. The maintenance custom options are going to be about the behavior of the different maintenance icon that you have. So Amplify and Dampen, Armors, Arcane Intellect. It's going to be all here. So we're going to go over these in a second. So as you can see, a little bit overwhelming. It's all over the place. But the cool thing is you just have to target and select the main group, Luxthos Mage, and then go to the custom options. And all the options are going to be grouped up for you. So it makes it pretty simple. And by doing that, you also get to see what the preview looks like as you go through these. So let's go through these one by one. Let's make a new design. Let's have fun. We're going to start here with the global style. This is really cool. You can apply a border as the first setting here. As you can see, I'm applying a border to every single icon in here, every single bar, it's all getting style all at the same time. So that's pretty cool. Let's put a 2-pixel bar into all of these. A 2-pixel border to all of these. You could go also and change the color of those border if you wanted to. So that's pretty nice. We're going to leave it in black, though. It looks kind of nice. It looks kind of clean. You can also decide to not apply the border to the resources bar. So that's going to be a possibility right here if you want that. And also the icon zoom. So if we remove the border here and we look over, what it does is it actually brings back like the 3D border of the original WoW icon. So by default, we're going to leave it at 30. But if you're using like a custom icon pack or whatever, you might want to remove the zoom if you want to see the full icon. But for these, if you're using default, we're going to apply 30%. And for this current style that we're going for here, we're going to apply a 2 border. We're now going to move on to the main icons. So here you can change the size of the icon. So width, height. If you want, you can change this. And as you can see, everything is fluid and free-flowing. Everything is adapting to the width of the new icon. So that's pretty cool. We're going to leave it at 48. But we're going to change the height, though. We're going to, like, squeeze this a little bit right here just to give it that nice little rectangle look right here. We're going to change the spacing down to 1 because why not? As you can see, it affects all of the primary icons and the resources bar. There we go. We're going to leave it at 1 for now. We're going to go for a more minimalistic look here. Number of icons is pretty interesting. This is what's going to dictate your top bar over here. How many icons are showing up? So right now there's 8, but you can go all the way to 10 if you want, or you can go even all the way down to 4. So let's say we do 6, for example. It's going to show you 6 icon. Everything else is going to overflow at the bottom, and then you might get some overflow here. So the design is 8 icons in mind. This is what I created the WeakAuras with. If you want the most optimal experience, but obviously if you want to modify things and move things around, let's say that you remove maybe the mana gem or whatever and you make space for it and you customize this to your liking. Okay, go ham. And so let's leave it at 8 for now. Let's leave this like that. Secondary icons, pretty much the same thing. So you're going to go for the width, for the height, and for the spacing. So we're not going to touch the width. We're mostly going to just squeeze down the secondary bar here at the bottom. And we're going to leave it at 24. Why not? The same rectangular look we had previously. And we're going to reduce the spacing to be consistent across all of our styling here. The dynamic icons are going to be the 2 groups at the top here. So you're going to be able to reduce the height again. There we go. All the way down. The spacing all the way to 1. And the bottom margin is going to be that spacing. So if you want if you wanted to have a little bit more or less breathing room with the rest of the WeakAuras, you can change that. The swap spell and effect is going to be quite nice. It allows you to change the group size. So if you want the dynamic to be, if you want the effects here to be on the right instead of the left, you can do that. And then it's going to swap over the spells to the other side as well. So they can trade place. You can also align them from the middle. So instead of lining up with the side of the WeakAuras and growing inward, you actually begin in the middle on each of their side and grow outward. So this is a nice style if that's something you're interested in. The side icons are going to modify the 2 groups right here, which are empty. So if you ever decide to put anything in there, if you drag and drop anything and you actively use these 2 groups, make sure you remember that you can actually customize their style as well. For the maintenance icon here, you have the same styling option. So same thing, we're going to squeeze this down for our little design here. So the maintenance is going to be the row at the bottom. We're going to reduce the spacing to 1, and the margin is going to control that breathing room here. The cool thing is going to be the behavior. So amplify and dampen, armor, arcane intellect. All of this is going to be customizable. So right now, dampen and amplified is only show if applied because it's kind of a unique scenario where you want to use this. It's not something you apply all the time, right? So it's only going to show if applied. But armors and arcane intellect are going to show if missing. If you want, you can change that behavior to always show, for example. And as long as you're out of combat in a rested area, they're not going to show. But as soon as you enter combat, they're going to show up, letting you know that you should probably apply armor and arcane intellect. There you go. But you can change also the behavior if you want to show them at all time, for example, to keep track of them. There we go. We're going to move on to the resources here for the mage. So you can move this entire block of resources to be on top of the primary icon here. Instead of being in the middle, below it, you can move it to be on top. So that's quite nice. It gives you a completely different look if that's something you're into. So that's a possibility. We're going to leave it right here. The height here are going to be made in categories. So the health and the mana uses height 1 over here. There we go. Height 2 is going to be used by combos. So for mages, it's going to be Fingers of Frost and Arcane Blast charges. They're going to be modified by this here. There we go. We're going to leave it. You know what? Let's put it down to 10 for this example. And Resource 3 is not going to be used by Mage. But if you want, you can use it to customize different things. Let's say you would like the health to be different. You could go into health, change its height to 3, and then you would be able to modify the health independently here. So that's a possibility that you can do. We're going to now move over to the out of combat alpha. So if you would like to reduce the alpha of the weak aura, all the way down to 0 if you want to. So out of combat, they're simply going to show up. And as soon as you enter combat, they're going to pop back up. They can also ignore the enemy and friendly target, which means if I target a target dummy or a friendly unit, the weak auras show back up, allowing you a little bit more freedom here for the display on how to clean up your UI. Health bar over here for the mage, you're going to be able to choose the height like I just showed you, but you can also choose the text formatting. If you want to have full value, formatted, full and percent, formatted in percent and percentage here. You can change the gradient here if you would like a different color for your health bar, right? You can do that. You can also remove the gradient if you want and only use the number 1 color here. That's a possibility. For the mana bar, we're going to pretty much have the same thing. So height, formatting, the gradient color, and the switch here. There we go. Arcane Blast is going to follow pretty much the same design. So height that you can choose. And then you're going to be able to choose the color of Arcane Blast by default. And when you reach full charge, you can have a different color here. Same thing for Fingers of Frost. You only have 1 color for it because it's a 2-charge system. So it's pretty easy to see when it's full. So you're going to have these charges here, and then the height is going to be changeable as well. So the cool thing is we're now left with this cool little new design, right? So it's completely different than what we had previously at the start. And the cool thing is that you can share this. So let's say that you would like this to be shared with your other classes. You can do copy. So right-click, general option, copy settings, custom configuration, and then you can go paste it to your other class. So you can go here, paste, and you're good to go, right? You can also share this with your friend if you want to, or even load style from other websites. So, for example, let's see a general option. We could do export if I want to share them. There we go. Or if I'm using an import from somebody else, you can import this right here as a normal weak aura, right? It's going to be sitting outside. It's not going to do much. But then if I reset this thing here to default, right? Because you have access to these buttons to reset the design to default, you're going to see that I go back to the original design, and then I can go ahead and take this import style that I just got. And as you can see, the option doesn't show. This is a little issue here. You just got to do a quick reload, and you're going to be good to go. There we go. Copy, custom configuration, and then we can paste custom configuration, and voila, we're back to the design we just created. Or in this case, it would be somebody else's. We can delete this. Make sure we delete always the one outside to keep things nice and cleaned up, right? You don't want to have duplicates. And there we go. We got some brand new WeakAuras, custom design, all of that good stuff, right? We're going to go ahead and reset. And that's going to be it for the custom options for Mage. One last thing I want to show you here for the customization is going to be on how to change the fonts. So there's 3 areas that you can change the fonts if you want to line up better with your new design. You're going to have the interior of the icons here. This is using the default World of Warcraft font. So just to show you here, if you actually go into the interface action bar and you click this, you can actually, the number is disappearing from both your action bar and the weak aura at the same time because they're using the same value, right? So that means that this value is not going to be changed inside the weak auras. It's actually going to be able to be changed by changing the default font. You can do this by using something like OmniCC or something a little bit more complex like Elf UI. That's going to allow you to change the look and behavior like I've explained in the installation part of the video. You'll be able to change the font, the color, and the behavior of this default cooldown clock over here. The other 2 values you're going to want to change are going to be directly on the auras. So if I click the core, for example, you can see some little one here on Fingers of Frost. There's one on Arcane on the Charge Blast. These are simply stack number. If I go and click one of the groups, go into display and scroll down, you'll see a text value here, right? So this text value is going to modify some different aspect of it. So you're going to be able to see, for example, we got Mana Gem, we got Finger of Frost, Arcane Blast, Combustion. So it's going to be very important to go into those categories right here, and you're going to want to modify. So Mana Gem has like multiple text. That's why you never want to modify on the main group. You actually want to do it individually here. So we're going to go down here. We're going to change. You can change the font of all the text for your Mana Gem. You can change it for all the other ones that we saw in here. So we know we have Finger of Frost, for example, has one. We have the Arcane Blast. You can change the font here, the size, the color, all of that good stuff. And the last number that you're going to be able to change. So make sure you do this in every single group, by the way. So you're going to have these kinds of number a little bit spread out. You just got to do it manually. Go ahead and edit the font, and you'll be good to go. And then the next area is going to be obviously onto the health and mana bar. These have number here, so you want to make sure that you change the font for that number. You can change the size if you want a bigger value here. You can do that both on the health and the mana bar. So make sure you change that to fit your new design if you desire to do so. Whenever you modify the WeakAuras, make sure you do a /reload. It's very important to make sure that everything is getting back to its original position. All right, well, that's it for this video. I cannot believe you made it all the way to the end. If you would like to support in any way, shape, or form, make sure to like this video. I know everybody says this, but it's true. Like the video, subscribe to my channel if you want to on YouTube, and come see me on Twitch. I stream every single day on Twitch. I play World of Warcraft, I play variety games, we make WeakAuras, we have a good time. Join us, come throw me a follow, just say hi. I'll be really happy. But in the meantime, I'll see you all in World of Warcraft.